One of the things that you normally need to do when you're doing an oil painting is you start off with a source image, and you normally need to increase the size because unless you want a painting that's A4 or whatever the size of the image is, you're going to want to increase the size and as accurately as possible. What I do in Expresso is I choose materials so that the board is twice the size of the image. Twice the size of this image will be two of those images in both directions. Now these 45 by 60 centimeter MDF boards, they're just a little bit bigger than the size that you want. So what I do is I create a margin. So what you're trying to achieve is get a workspace that's double the size of the image. So you need to create a margin that makes it that size. Now I've got this piece of timber from Bunnings that it's 30 mils, 3 centimeters by 10 mils, 1 centimeter. And if I make a margin using that, I can butt the paper up to that, and you'll see that there is a very small margin, perhaps 4 mils left over, and there's a margin on this side which happens to be 10 mils. So I can put that along the edge and mark a 10 mil margin. So I'm going to have a 10 mil margin there, a 30 mil margin there. So I've marked out those margins, and besides, as I said, that very small space there, this is pretty much exactly double the size of the A4 image. Now you need reference points. When you're trying to copy an image, you need some reference points. Traditionally, people might do a grid pattern on the image and then make a similar grid on the board, and then meticulously copy all the intersections of the image along the lines of that matrix of squares onto the board. Now I found that extremely tedious, but you can get away with just having far fewer reference points, and really the only reference point that I use is the center of the sheet. And you can quite easily find the center of the sheet by going from corner to corner and making a mark. So the center of this A4 piece of paper is right there. Now if you do the similar thing with your big board, with your board, going from corner to corner of the marked out area of the board, not the full board, I've now got a central mark on the board that matches the mark on the image. So immediately I know that, similar to the image, I know the nose, for example, is off to the right, almost in line with that center point. So using that reference point, you have a pretty good idea where all these shapes are going to be. So I know, for example, the nose is going to be somewhere there, the eyes are going to be here, the mouth here. So straight away you've got some idea on how to proceed. I keep on talking about negative space, because negative space is just as important as what you might call positive space. So if you look at this image, the face is the subject, is the positive space, but this space over here is the negative space, the space outside of the subject. And if you can accurately draw the negative space and get that edge accurately drawn, then at the same time you're creating the shape of the image. Now I've noticed that some people, in fact everybody, to a greater or lesser degree, they have problems even with the negative space, getting the relative width of it correct. People generally are fine getting the shape, but actually trying to reproduce this negative shape on the board in the right position seems to be a problem. So I'd like to introduce the calipers. Now I made these calipers myself. There are a couple of bits of wood, once again from my favourite store, Bunnings. There's a butterfly locking device there. I made a hole and I stuck some pieces of wire on the end. So that's made some big calipers. Now we know that this board is twice the size of the image, so we also know that any measurement I take on this A4 piece of paper, I just have to double it and I'll find the accurate point on the bigger board. So talking about the negative space again, if I put the calipers on the edge of the A4 piece of paper to the edge of the subject's head, and I put it onto the board in the same location and double that size, I now know on the board where this point is. I know it's there. And you can see the relationship between the center point and that point, the center point and that point. Now you can do this as often as you need to do, or you can use the calipers to actually check your work. So what I'll try and do is to freehand this shape, and then I can check my work with the calipers. So I can see this line is going out slightly. I normally paint and don't use pencil, but for this exercise I'll use pencil. And then the shape comes in at some point. And if you use your eyesight, you can see that's about a third down, that's about a third down. So looking at the board, that's about a third, that's about a third. So I'm just guessing, and guessing is perfectly fine. So I'm guessing it's going to go down there like that, and then it comes in. And I'm actually looking, I've got the sheet there, I'm actually looking at that angle, and I'm comparing my angle to that. And I know the center of the chin is about half the distance from there, or it's the same distance from there to there, from there to there to there. So I'm guessing the center of the chin is going to be here, and then it goes like this. So if you look at the negative space being formed, this space over here, does it appear to be the same as this space over here? And you may say yes, you may say no, but we can check these points. For example, we can see that the high point, I could actually make a little mark on there, the high point of this cheek, I can measure that, and I can compare that to where I've drawn my high point, and we can see how accurate I am, and I'm pretty well spot on. But let's see how far down it is. Have I got it in the correct location from the top? So generally speaking, you wouldn't bother with all these extra measurements, but if you're unsure, then you can always do this. So that's pretty I guessed pretty accurately. I could do the same with this point over here. There's this transition from there to there. I mean, that's an important point, because along that line is where the mouth is. So it'd be good to know quite accurately where this point is, because I know the mouth is going to be along that line. So let's actually do that. Here's my transition that I guessed. Let me put a little mark there at the center point there. And I'm going to mark that with my calipers. And, oh well, now I put it in the wrong spot. It actually needs to be substantially lower than that. So you can see how how these errors can creep in. So that transition point is a little bit lower, and we can actually check the width. So the point is there. And I'm substantially wrong here as well. So I've obviously made this slope too shallow. It's a lot more vertical. So that's a subtle difference. Generally speaking, I'd go with my gut instinct. But for accuracy, you can use the calipers. And you can use it at any point in your painting. If things seem to be going awry, then you can use the calipers. You could also use the calipers to find other key points. For example, we know that or suspect that the eye is just above this high cheekbone, roughly there. I could measure precisely, I could measure this point. From the top. Or you can guess. Depends on how accurate you want to be. So I could use the calipers to find out precisely where that corner of the eye is, and it's right there. So how does that compare with the center point? There's the center point, there's the corner of the eye, there's the center point, there's the corner of the eye. It all seems to be tallying up. So we can see the face taking shape. So how often you use the calipers depends on how accurate you want to be with your drawing. The more points you make, the longer the process is going to be. So, but it might be worthwhile, for example, we now know where the corner of the eye is. It might be worthwhile to say, oh well, I want to know how wide the eye is. And you can say, right, the eye is that wide. The eye is going to be there somewhere. What is the width from the outside of that eye? Let's just take that precise point to there. And it's there. So we know the eye is in there somewhere. So generally speaking, I wouldn't be using this, but you can. Because it's a lot easier, and it's a good thing to train your brain to look at the relative position of the shapes. We have this reference point, so I know, and I now know where the corner of the eye is, and typically the corner of the eye lines up with the edge of the nose. With every white person, that is pretty well true. I think some races have got wider noses. So, with those few reference points, I know the nose is in there somewhere, and now I'm going to start guessing. I know the mouth is in line with that jawline, so I know the mouth is going to be, and we've already said we believe the center of the image is there, so I think the mouth is going to be there. So I normally do all this marking with paint, because unless I'm doing a commission, and obviously with a commission you really do need to get everything absolutely spot on, because it's somebody's loved one and they're very, very familiar with their face, and so everything needs to be absolutely spot on. And with commissions I actually trace the image on, because it's going to be hard enough to do the painting, besides getting accuracy in the positions of all these shapes. So I think that's all I wanted to say in this video. Look at the negative shapes, but make sure you're working on a board that is a fixed multiple of the image. From convenience, because I'm using these 45 times 60 centimeter boards, for convenience, I'm just making sure the working space is double the size of the A4 and the image is substantially bigger. If you go to 3 times, you're talking about a much bigger painting, substantially bigger. So key points: make sure your work surface is an even multiple of the image. Choose a reference point, and the most convenient, because you just have to go there and there, is to find the center point, and then you've got a pretty good idea where all the shapes, all these objects are in relation to that reference point. And finally, think about the negative space, because once you've found that edge with certainty, it becomes a lot easier in putting all these features onto the face. And make some of these calipers. They're very easy to make, and you just double up all the distances, and you can check at any time in the process how things are going with your painting. Thank you for watching.